1%. That's the distance between Iran and nuclear weapons. 6 hours ago, the International Atomic Energy Agency released an emergency assessment. Iranian centrifuges at the Fordo facility buried deep inside a mountain protected by hundreds of feet of rock have produced uranium enriched to 89.2%. Weapons grade is 90%, 1%. A technical rounding error, a single day's enrichment at current rates. The threshold the entire world has spent 30 years trying to prevent is now measured in hours, not months, not years, hours. But here's where this story breaks apart. This isn't an accident. This isn't gradual escalation. This is a deliberate sprint to the finish line while American bombs fall on Iranian cities. 3 weeks ago, Iran's enrichment level sat at 60%. Already alarmingly high, but still months away from weapons capability. The supreme leader was alive. The regime was calculating long-term survival. Patience was still strategy. Then we killed Cam. Then we destroyed their infrastructure. Then we deployed invasion forces. And Iran started enriching at maximum speed. They're not hiding it. They're announcing it. The IAEA report wasn't a leak. Iran invited inspectors to verify the enrichment level. They want the world to know. The message is unmistakable. Stop us or we cross. But here's what makes this moment different from every previous nuclear crisis. Iran isn't threatening to build a weapon. They're threatening to prove they can. One more percentage point, one test, one demonstration that changes the Middle East forever. And the American bombs that were supposed to prevent this, they may have caused it. Because here's what we know for certain. The IAEA has confirmed Iran possesses enough enriched uranium for 10 to 12 nuclear weapons if processed to weapons grade. The technical knowledge exists. The delivery systems exist. The centrifuges are spinning right now. We are witnessing the final hours before a new nuclear state is born, or the final hours before America does whatever it takes to stop it. Either outcome changes the world. Stay with me. What you learn in the next 15 minutes will show you exactly how close we are. What happens if Iran crosses, and why the next 72 hours may be the most dangerous since the Cuban Missile Crisis. Welcome back to Warnomics. Before we break down what 89% enrichment actually means, why Iran is sprinting to the threshold now, and what America's options are in the final hours, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell right now. This is the nuclear crisis everyone feared. Trust me, by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly what's happening and why the clock is now measured in hours. To understand why 89% enrichment represents a civilizational crisis point, you need to grasp what uranium enrichment actually means and why the last 1% isn't just a number. Let's start with the physics. Natural uranium contains two isotopes, U who are 238 and U who are 235. Only UI-235 can sustain a nuclear chain reaction, the explosive process that makes atomic bombs work. But natural uranium is only 0.7% U-235. The rest is U-238, which is useless for weapons. Enrichment separates these isotopes. Centrifuges spin uranium hexafluoride gas at incredible speeds, gradually concentrating U-235. Here's the critical insight. Enrichment gets exponentially easier as purity increases, going from natural uranium 0.7% to low-enriched uranium 5%. Requires enormous effort, about 75% of the total work needed for a weapon. Going from 5% to 20% is another significant step. But going from 60% to 90%, that's the final sprint. The physics get easier, not harder. The centrifuges work faster, the timeline compresses. Iran at 60% was months from weapons capability. Iran at 89% is days. Now let's understand what weapons grade actually means. 90% enrichment is the standard threshold for weapons-grade uranium. At this purity, you have enough concentrated UD-235 to achieve supercriticality, the point where a chain reaction becomes self-sustaining and explosive, a simple gun-type nuclear weapon. The design used on Hiroshima requires approximately 50-60 kilos of weapons-grade uranium. More sophisticated implosion designs can work with less. Iran currently possesses over 440 kilos of uranium enriched to 60%. If fully processed to 90%, this becomes enough material for 10 to 12 nuclear weapons. They don't need to enrich more material, they just need to enrich what they already have a little bit further. This is why the 89% announcement terrified non-proliferation experts. Iran has demonstrated they can reach the threshold. They've chosen to stop for now 1 percentage point short. That's not technical limitation, that's political signaling. Now let's understand the timeline. At current enrichment rates, Iran could produce enough 90% uranium for one weapon within 1 to 2 days, not weeks, days. From there, weaponization, actually building a bomb, requires additional steps. Converting uranium gas to metal, machining it into weapon components, assembling with conventional explosives, and integrating with a delivery system. Estimates for this process range from 6 months to 2 years for a deliverable warhead. But a crude device enough to demonstrate capability could be assembled much faster. And here's what American intelligence has consistently underestimated: Iranian technical capability. Iran has worked on nuclear weapons design for decades. The Ahmed program, their covert weapons research, was supposedly halted in 2003. But knowledge doesn't disappear. Scientists don't forget, documents don't evaporate. If Iran has continued covert weapons design work, as most intelligence agencies believe, the weaponization timeline could be far shorter than official estimates suggest. This is the nightmare scenario. Iran crosses 90% and demonstrates capability before anyone can stop them. Let's examine what the IAEA report actually revealed and what it tells us about Iranian intentions. The technical details. The IAEA's emergency assessment documented enrichment at 89.2% at the Ford fuel enrichment plant. This facility is buried inside a mountain near Qual, specifically designed to survive aerial bombardment. Let that sink in. Iran chose to sprint toward weapons-grade uranium at the one facility America cannot easily destroy. Fordo sits under approximately 80 meters of rock and concrete. Conventional bombs, even the largest bunker busters in American inventory, may not penetrate. This is not coincidence. This is calculated. Iran is enriching at the facility where they're most protected. If America wants to stop them, bombing may not be sufficient. Ground operations to physically seize the facility might be required. The IAEA also reported that Iran has reconfigured centrifuge cascades for maximum enrichment efficiency. They've disconnected monitoring equipment in certain areas. They've restricted inspector access to specific production halls. Iran isn't just enriching. They're preparing for the final sprint while limiting outside visibility into exactly what they're doing. The breakout timeline. IAEA Director General Rafael G. issued an unprecedented statement. We are now measuring Iran's breakout timeline in days, not weeks or months. The international community must understand the gravity of this moment. Days. That's the official assessment from the world's nuclear monitoring authority. Not months of warning time, not weeks to mount diplomatic pressure, days. Once Iran crosses 90%, the material exists. It cannot be unenriched. The knowledge cannot be unlearned. The only options become accept a nuclear Iran or physically remove the material through military action. Why Iran is sprinting now? The timing is not coincidental. Iran's enrichment acceleration correlates precisely with American military escalation. Before the war, Iran maintained enrichment at 60%, high enough to demonstrate capability, low enough to avoid triggering military response. Strategic ambiguity served their interests. After leadership decapitation, everything changed. The supreme leader's death removed the decision-maker who controlled nuclear policy. The regime faces potential extinction. The calculations that favored patience no longer apply. Iran's new leadership, whoever is actually making decisions, appears to have concluded that nuclear capability is the only guarantee of survival. If the regime is going to die anyway, it might as well die with nuclear weapons. Or better yet, not die because it has them. This is the logic of desperation meeting nuclear physics. The demonstration scenario. Intelligence analysts are increasingly focused on one scenario. Iran doesn't just build a weapon, it tests one. A nuclear detonation on Iranian territory, a demonstration of capability, would instantly transform regional dynamics. It cannot be denied, dismissed, or ambiguously interpreted. Iran becomes a nuclear state in an afternoon. The international response options after a test are dramatically more limited than before. You cannot undo a demonstrated weapon. You can only accept or retaliate against a fate complying exactly this scenario. Enrich to weapons grade. Assemble a device. Detonate in a remote location. Announce capability. The entire 30-year prevention effort becomes meaningless in a flash of light. What American intelligence is seeing. Classified briefings to congressional leadership have reportedly increased to daily frequency. Satellite imagery analysts are tracking activity at suspected weaponization sites. Specific indicators being monitored. Movement of high explosive components consistent with implosion device assembly activity. At facilities associated with the historic Ahmad weapons program, preparation of potential test sites in remote eastern Iran. Communications patterns suggesting weapons program acceleration. None of this has been publicly confirmed, but the pattern of urgent briefings, emergency IAEA statements, and NATO consultations suggests intelligence assessments are alarming. Let's examine the mathematics that define this nuclear threshold, and why the numbers are more terrifying than anyone wants to admit. The enrichment math. Iran has approximately 440 kilos of uranium enriched to 60%. Enriching from 60% to 90% requires approximately 1,500 SWU separative work units per kilogram. Iran's current centrifuge capacity can produce approximately 6,800 SWU per month. Converting the entire 60% stockpile to 90% would take roughly 3 out of 4 months. But Iran doesn't need to convert everything. One bomb requires 50-60 kilos of weapons-grade material, enriching that amount from 89% to 90% less than 48 hours. With current centrifuge configuration, they're not months away. They're a weekend away. The weapons math 440 kilos at 60% if fully enriched to 90% yields approximately 250-300 kilos of weapons-grade uranium. At 50-60 kilos per weapon, that's material for 5 to 6 simple gun-type devices, or 8-ton or 12 more sophisticated implosion weapons. Iran doesn't need to build all of them. They need to build one. One device, one test, one demonstration. Everything after that is academic. The delivery math. Iran possesses over 3,000 ballistic missiles. Many are capable of carrying nuclear warheads. The Shahab-3 has demonstrated one 300-kilometer range, enough to reach Israel, American bases throughout the Gulf, and major European cities. The Khabar-Shechen can reach 450 kilometers. The Khorshaw reaches 2,000 kilometers, putting parts of southern Europe in range. Miniaturizing a warhead for missile delivery requires additional engineering, but Iran doesn't need miniaturization for a demonstration. A stationary test proves capability without missile integration. Once capability is proven, the world must assume missiles could eventually carry warheads, even if that's months or years away. The deterrence math. Why does one nuclear weapon matter? Can't America's 5,500 warheads deter any Iranian use? This is where deterrence theory gets complicated. A nuclear Iran doesn't need to use weapons to gain advantage. The mere existence of nuclear capability transforms every calculation. America cannot invade a nuclear state without risking nuclear response. Israel cannot conduct regime change operations against a nuclear Iran. Gulf states must accommodate a nuclear neighbor. American troop presence in the region becomes hostage to Iranian nuclear restraint. One weapon doesn't let Iran win a nuclear war. It lets them prevent conventional defeat. That's enough. The verification math. Even if diplomacy resumes, verification becomes nearly impossible once weapons-grade material exists. You can hide 50 kilos of uranium. You can move it between facilities. You can deny its existence while maintaining capability. The IAEA cannot inspect what it cannot find, and Iran has had decades to prepare concealment. The window for preventing Iranian nuclear capability closes permanently once that material exists. There are no takebacks. The implications of Iran crossing the nuclear threshold extend across every dimension of global security. For Israel has maintained for decades that Iranian nuclear capability represents existential threat. Prime Minister Netanyahu has repeatedly called it a red line that cannot be crossed. If Iran reaches weapons-grade enrichment, Israeli decision-makers face their worst nightmare. Act alone against a nuclear threshold state, or accept permanent strategic vulnerability. Reports indicate Israeli military planners have prepared strike options for exactly this scenario. But Fordo's underground location limits conventional strike effectiveness. Israel may possess bunker-buster weapons capable of penetrating, but only American B-2 bombers can deliver the largest earth-penetrating munitions. Israel may need American participation to destroy Fordo. That decision point approaches rapidly for Saudi Arabia. The kingdom has consistently indicated it will match Iranian nuclear capability. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman stated explicitly, "If Iran develops a nuclear bomb, we will follow suit." A nuclear Iran triggers regional proliferation. Saudi Arabia, possibly Turkey, possibly Egypt. The Middle East transforms from a region with one nuclear state, Israel, to one with 3, 4, or more. This cascade cannot be stopped once it begins. For American forces, 40,000 American troops in the Gulf region become strategic hostages to Iranian nuclear restraint. Any future escalation must account for nuclear response. Invasion scenarios that assume conventional conflict become potentially nuclear scenarios. The freedom of action America currently enjoys, bombing what it wants, striking when it chooses, evaporates against a nuclear-armed Iran for global non-proliferation. The Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty is already strained. If Iran crosses the threshold despite 30 years of international pressure, what message does that send? Every aspiring nuclear state learns. Build capability fast enough and prevention fails. Weather the pressure, survive the sanctions, get the bomb. North Korea already proved this model works. Iranian success confirms it. The global non-proliferation regime, the structure that has limited nuclear weapons to 9 states, may collapse. The 21st century could see 20, 30, or more nuclear-armed nations. That's not a world anyone wants to live in for this war. Iranian nuclear capability doesn't end the war. It transforms it. America cannot accept nuclear Iran, but America cannot denuclearize Iran through airstrikes alone. Ground operations to seize nuclear facilities become potentially necessary. Exactly the escalation trigger we discussed previously. The 89% enrichment announcement may be Iran's way of saying, invade us and we'll cross. Back off and we'll negotiate. Nuclear blackmail as survival strategy. America's options for preventing Iranian nuclear breakout narrow with each hour. Option 1, massive strike on nuclear facilities. Target for Fordo, Natanz, and all known enrichment sites. Use the largest bunker busters available. Except that some facilities may survive. Problem, Fordo may be too deep. Strikes may not reach centrifuges. Iran may have already moved weapons-grade material to unknown locations. And strikes almost certainly trigger the final sprint to weaponization, rather than preventing it. Option 2, covert sabotage, cyber attacks on centrifuges, assassination of key scientists, physical sabotage by intelligence assets. Problem, Iran has hardened against cyber attacks since the Stuxnet. Key scientists are protected. The timeline is too short for sabotage to prevent breakout that occurs in days. Option 3, negotiate immediately. Offer sanctions relief, security guarantees, and diplomatic recognition in exchange for rollback to lower enrichment levels. Problem, Iran has no reason to believe American promises while bombs are falling. The war would need to pause for negotiations to be credible. Pausing may give Iran time to cross the threshold. Option 4, accept nuclear Iran. Acknowledge that prevention has failed. Shift to containment and deterrence. Problem, Politically impossible for any American president. Israel may act unilaterally. Regional proliferation begins immediately. Option 5. Ground seizure of nuclear facilities. Deploy forces to physically capture Fordo and secure nuclear material. Problem. This is the 500,000 troop scenario, the full-scale invasion. The consequences extend for decades. The 89% announcement may have been designed to force exactly this impossible choice. For those of us watching from home, 89% uranium enrichment sounds technical, abstract, a number in a report, but it represents the end of a world we've known for 80 years. A world where nuclear weapons remained limited to a small club of states, where proliferation was controlled, where the unthinkable stayed unthought. The honest answer: we may be watching the birth of a new nuclear state in real time. The decisions made in the next 72 hours will determine whether that happens or whether something even more dramatic occurs to prevent it. Every option is terrible, every outcome is historic. What you can know is that this moment matters more than almost anything else happening in the world. What you cannot know is how it ends. Nobody knows. Not the Pentagon, not TAN, not the IAEA. We're in the fog of nuclear crisis now. Iran at 89% enrichment represents the most dangerous nuclear moment since the Cuban Missile Crisis. Warnomics will be here for every development. If this analysis helped you understand why that 1% matters more than anything else in global security right now, share this video with everyone who needs to understand what's happening. Drop a comment below. Should America strike Iranian nuclear facilities now or accept that prevention has failed? There may be no good answer. Subscribe if you haven't already. Hit that bell because the next 72 hours may determine whether Iran becomes a nuclear state, and you'll want real-time analysis of every development. This is Warnomics. Stay informed, stay vigilant. See you in the next one.